which, is a business we started many years ago. Why did we get into this? We suddenly found that this, whether we are into any form of gearing, is a field in mechanical engineering which I do believe all of us will agree is pretty much at the top of the pyramid. It's not a nuts and bolts game. Whether it's automotive, whether it's industrial, as Dr. Sriram was saying, gears is a very special area. It needs equipment, it needs a bent of mind, and it needs engineering, dedication, devotion, and passion. So that's what brings all of us together over here. There are a lot of easier and cheaper ways, faster ways of making money. So the question is, why are we breaking our heads over these fine tolerances, trying to make a success of our businesses through this effort? This is because of the passion that I believe all of us have in common. This is a common denominator. And I, for one, do believe that there is tremendous scope in this field, in the allied field, equipment manufacturing, the gear industry, manufacturing, it goes on and on and on. The second point, as a board member of AGMA, I just wanted to share a few things with you, and this is pretty much as good as a platform as anywhere else, to find out why is it that AGMA wanted to have an Indian on board. I mean, they haven't done it for many years. This is a clear indication, whether it's me and maybe tomorrow some of you, it's because they wanted to integrate with a country that's coming of age. They didn't do this for a long time. But this is a very clear indication that they have thrown the doors open to say, look, we respect the country. And what was it that held them back all this time? Nothing specifically, but we were not recognized as a manufacturing base, a manufacturing industry. We still are not. It's going to take a little while before we get to that point. And I'm not talking about large numbers as some of our neighbors do. I'm talking about quality engineering. And it's good that we did not jump into this game many years ago, or else we could have either been mass producers, with low quality, high volume, and that would have been the end of this. So I think the timing is just perfect that we are where we are. The last point, speaking on behalf of all of us, I was just talking to Mr. Sriram before he came and addressed all of you. I said, let's take a very simple example of what's happening, and cricket being an Indian game. What is this IPL all about? And who is the IPL? There's not a single team in the IPL where you don't have a foreigner participating. And I think if you take that as a simple example, I do believe coming together and working with the best talents. Look at this exhibition. 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we would not have had these brand names, whether it's Klingenberg or Gleason or Niles or any one of these. Today you find people who've been in the industry, supporting the industry, becoming entrepreneurs. This is something else. India can come up with tremendous amount of entrepreneurs, and I do recommend and suggest if they are trained or inclined in the field of gears, I do believe that they have a great future. So I'm just giving you this preamble, and one other very important point I wanted to stress on, and I thought Dr. Sriram would say this because I heard it from him. As soon as the Murugappa group took over Shanti Gears, and I had the pleasure and privilege of talking to Dr. Sriram, the very first opening statement, or in the very first 5 minutes, he gave me the philosophy of their company, which I believe should be the philosophy of the Indian gear industries. He said, our management believes in making a statement to say, collaborate, do not compete. I think if we come under one umbrella and all of the gear industries in India collaborate, I think the world will have to sit up and watch out for us, because it's a commendable force that we can come together. So I thought I'd just make this little introductory speech and then get to the rest of the program. So as the moderator, I think the whole idea is basically about where is the gear industry going. I know there were a few opportunities for you guys to come up with some questions, and I wish we had more people here, because this panel pretty much would come up with all your answers. So I would encourage you to bring up a question irrespective of how basic it is, because that's where it's all going to start. So you have the panel here. Do you all have any questions about I do have a lot of questions, but I think it's more for you people out there. Where is this industry going? What is the future of the Indian gear industry? Is it going to be something that will sustain? Are we going to be able to handle recession? Are we going to be able to take up the quality levels that is expected by the Western world? When I say the Western world, I'm talking about the high end. You see, the mediocre end, everybody does, and India is known for that. At the high end, that's where the action is. Are we striving for that? Do we have the wherewithal? Do we have the guts? And do we have the challenge in us to take it to those levels? So, if you have any questions for the gentleman over here, I'll ask each of them to give you their take on the industry. If you have any questions, I'd like you to start with that so that, we get the ball rolling. Philip, you just got into your own steam. I think you probably have some questions. You're selling, so you must know where exactly your money is going to come from. Do you have any questions? Yeah, I think we have the first one coming. Thank you.
Most of the products have certain testing standards. For example, like before coming to this industry, I was in the chain industry where it needs to pass through certain fatigue life, certain testing. The testing is pretty much standards are set globally. Whereas when it comes to gearbox, there is no testing standards, not only in India but globally. Now, this is one reason why probably customers, I'm coming from a customer perspective, customer won't be able to identify a bad product from a good product, because of which overall quality level actually comes down. Is that something the industry should come together and put a quality standard?
Well, that's a good question, and if I may take the liberty, I'm going to ask Mr. Joe Franklin he won't get into the technicalities, but he will address that very point, because as we speak, AGMA has that exact subject being discussed over in the United States while we are sitting over here. I'll have Joe give you an answer to that.
I think you've hit on a very important and interesting question. Suleiman made reference to in the U.S., AGMA has a series of education seminars. These are advanced engineering level. They are multi-day, 2, 3, 4-day seminars with a distinguished instructor, a recognized expert in his field, who come together to learn about evaluating, manufacturing, and repairing gearboxes. These are different seminars. The topics are so deep and so involved that we spend typically 3 days on one area of gearbox technology. As to your specific question, I know that AGMA and ISO, or DIN if you use the German version of ISO, have a number of testing standards for individual components, for elements of the gear, but I am not aware of, and I'm not an engineer to start with, so give me a little latitude on that, but I'm not aware of a technical standard, as you said, that is used for the entire box. It is more a process to evaluate different elements of the box throughout the manufacturing process that leads to the final solution or the final answer. I will go back to my technical staff and I'll send them an email, and by the end of the day I may have an answer as to whether AGMA at least or whether ISO has a document that might be valuable, but I'm pretty sure you know that better than I do already.
Thank you. Specific this to question, we are experiencing in the sugar industries also. We are a consultant for sugar industries. The sugar industry uses the various range of gearboxes as low as 0.25 kilowatt to as high as 1500 kilowatts in different applications. Especially when we are selecting a gearbox, as Mr. Murugappa told, the service factor normally we recommend to be adopted. Either normally we expect a service factor of 2. But as Mr. Murugappa pointed very correctly, if one stage is having a higher service factor and the other stage is having a lower service factor, ultimately the lower service factor one has to go up, and then what is the fun of having a higher service factor for one stage? So, and this is because of less educated customer who was not able to understand what is it in the service factor plays a role in a gearbox. In a 4-stage gearbox, I had an experience. A gearbox failed in industry, such a mill gearbox. So it's a continuous process industry where a gearbox fails when the whole factory stops for 2-3 days till we get it. When we analyzed the problem, we came across exactly the one Mr. Murugappa told. Exactly the one. The one stage is very good range and the other game. So what is it the industry can teach the customer? Okay, what are the things he has to check it? As a consultant, I know certain things because when I analyze it, I found it. But the end user, a customer factory, really do not know. So as AGMA and ISO standards, if you specify some of the things and educate the customer, it will be definitely useful for the end user to have a life. And one more thing also I would like to have, when the gearbox people come to us, some people, my life of gearbox is 50,000 hours, and another fellow telling, no sir, my life is 100,000 hours. Now, I don't know which one I have to select, whether 50,000 hours is okay for me or 100,000 hours is okay for me. Definitely, as a common man, 100,000 hours is definitely my life of I expect the life of gearbox, not in real time, but the period of service of that gearbox to give me, it is 100,000 hours is then the cost, 50,000 hours to 100,000 hours is, the cost is also there. But a good gearbox with a good manufacturing, good quality of materials adopted, if it is 100,000 hours, if it is giving a life for me, as an end user, my client will be very happy to use it for a longer time. And that quality plays a very big role. So this, as you said, the customer need to be educated what type of gearbox he has to select, what are the basic criteria to be done actually. Thank you very much.
Well, I'll have Mr. Soundarajan from Gleason complement the same ideas.
As far as I think, this question is very general. Basically, you must consider that instead of saying gearbox, it could be a combination of assembly containing gear elements. If you put it into the domain of auto industry or put it into the mechanical engineering gear transmission industry, it's all related to the end user, whether it is for a sugar mill or a cement plant or process industry or a power generation industry, the methods change. So there is no single unified standard for it. If you go for power generation industry, the utilization of the gears for continuous running, service factors of high quality, and then measurement of high pitch line velocity induced fatigue, and then temperature for the scoring resistance. These are all things which have to be specifically addressed. In those areas, American Petroleum Institute, API, have relevant standards for it, right from balancing appropriately, as well as this modification took place in an amendment in 2003, and this also continues to grow more in that. Talk about more on surface finish and how to determine the oil properties and combining with the gear to be served. Come to regular gear industry for transmission reduction gears, it has to go with what it has to do with the end user. And come to avionics and defense sector, there are some special gadgets which they use in defense, in missile systems. So the end user or the designer makes a certain application to see how final target is to be met. It could be a pair of gears which may be according to drawing standard to DIN class 4 to DIN 3962, but the ultimate use is not whether it is really made to DIN 4, but whether it delivers the point. For example, if a fins of a air-to-air missile is to be made in a small planetary gearbox, they have a gadget they fabricate it to see that ultimately that it reaches with velocity and hits the target. If you go to ask a colonel or chief of Air Force, he will see if I miss a target, it's a failure. So they have tests for that. So the gear inside could be DIN 4, DIN 5, but ultimately combination of ratios with backlash and other thing should meet the angular movement of the fin. Because the planetary gearbox adjusts the fin with that velocity to change the directional movement. So these are basically connected. Or if you take a power steering system, which is used in